Hey, what's going on? This is Sports Truth. I'm your favorite host in the entire world, Jordan Harris. So, unless you've been living under a rock the last few days, last couple of weeks, you definitely know that the Hurricanes have been on a hot streak as far as the transfer portal goes. We've had excellent, I don't like to use the word luck, but we've had excellent fortunes in the transfer portal over the last few days, last couple of weeks. What I want to do today is I want to talk about the four players that we recently got commitments from the transfer portal, and then I want to give my opinion on what this means for the Hurricanes this coming season. I want to talk about if this changes my outlook or my prediction on what the season could look like for the Hurricanes. But before we get into that, I want to talk about one of our fan favorite Canes that recently left. Jakari Brown ended up announcing that he's going to UCF. So, congratulations. God bless him. I do think that he made an excellent choice in going to UCF. Reason being is that Gus Malzahn is there, and he coached at Auburn, so he's got familiarity with those dual threat quarterbacks. He helped bring Cam Newton to Auburn. He was the offensive coordinator, the lead, um, the the assistant coach, the lead assistant coach on that championship team when Auburn won with Cam Newton. So congratulations to Jakari Brown for choosing, I think, a really good location for him. He should be able to compete. He should be able to start this season if everything goes according to plan. So congratulations to him. Now let's go ahead and like I said, God bless him, but this is probably the last time I ever talk about him. He is a fan favorite, but he's not a Cane anymore. So there's our farewell to Jakari Brown. All right, so let's talk about the new incoming Hurricanes. Let's start with Damian Martinez first. So I did a video on Damian Martinez when he first committed a few days ago. As a prospect, he was a 3-star at a high school, and then as a transfer, he's a 4-star. Running back, 6 foot, 237 pounds. Um, Go over a couple of his awards. So he was a freshman All American, Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year at Oregon State, and then in 2023, he was first team All Pac-12 honors and a semifinalist for the Doak Walker Award, which is like the best running back in the nation. One of the best things about him is that he does have 2 years remaining. I'm not sure if he's going to use that second year, but it is always nice to get these transfer players who aren't just one and done. I think it's pretty cool to get these players who have at least a couple of years left. Next player I want to talk about is Sam Brown. So Sam Brown is from Georgia. He is transferring from Houston, and coming out of high school, he was a 4-star recruit. And now, as a transfer, he's also a 4-star recruit. So he was rated a 90 out of 100 as a prospect, and now he's a 92 out of 100 as a transfer. So he actually went up, which it's not typical for that to happen. Because most of the time when people transfer, it's because their ranking on the totem pole dropped. They're probably not playing as much as they want to, and now they're looking for a new opportunity. But for him, his trajectory is going upward, which is always nice to get those kind of players in the door. So wide receiver, 6'2", 195 pounds. Picked the Hurricanes over Texas A&M, which is always nice. Brown is 24/7 Sports considered the number 10 wide receiver in the transfer portal. And then if you know anything about the Big 12, so he played at Houston. If you know anything about the Big 12, they throw the ball and put points on the board. They play hardly any defense. So the fact that he was 8th in the Big 12 in 2023 with receiving yards per game, I think that's super impressive. Out of all the receivers, out of all the high-powered offenses in the Big 12, he was ranked number 8 with 67.9 receiving yards per game on 62 receptions, 815 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he had a really good season last year. One of the cool things, or I guess one of the reasons why maybe he chose Miami, is not only because we've been really hot lately, as far as just having our name in the media and how the trajectory is going up, up, up for the Hurricanes, but he's also reuniting with his old offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson. So That I'm thinking that's part of why Miami got the inside scoop on him. I'm thinking that's probably part of the reason why. He also spoke about how he worked in the offseason with our brand new star quarterback. That's another reason why we were able to land Brown. So that's super positive, obviously. Brown finished in the top 10 in most measurements in explosive receptions. So he's not just a reception, he's not a possession receiver, but he's actually a big play receiver. Top 10 in most measures in explosive receptions with 33 catches of 10 or more, and then he had 12 receptions of 20 yards or more. So it is cool that we're getting players in who are not just possession receivers, which are good, obviously, but we're actually getting some big play receivers, big play threats. I think that's pretty cool. And also, just like Martinez, he has 2 years remaining, which is also really nice. I do expect him to use both of those years, but we shall see. The next commitment that we have is Jalen Alderman. He is a linebacker, 6'1", 230 pounds, from Georgia, from Valdosta, Georgia. Out of high school, he was rated 84 out of 100, so he's a three-star recruit out of high school, and then he's a three-star prospect transfer. He actually went from 84 to 87, so he actually went up. His star level remained the same, but his number ranking stayed. It went up a little bit, so that's always nice. The cool thing about this player is that he was a 14-game starter for the Louisville Cardinals last year. I think that's really impressive, especially because if you don't remember much about Louisville, like we did play them last year, and that game was so frustrating because I kept watching them, and I'm like, this team is not that good, but they were just manhandling our Hurricanes. Like it was so frustrating watching that game. But the one thing you couldn't deny was that their defense was really good. They had a really impressive defense. And for this guy to be a 14-game starter for that defense, you got to welcome that into the program, right? And you have to assume that he's going to find a starting position somewhere. Our linebacking core is pretty good. Like Francisco Marino is coming back. We got a really good defense. I mean, we got a decent defensive line. I would say a pretty good defensive line. But our linebacker core is pretty good. And to be adding a player like this, I think it would be nuts to tell him he's going to have to sit on the bench and wait to come into the game. They're going to find some kind of way to get him starting. So I do expect him to start every game this coming season. He had 58 total tackles last season, seven tackles for a loss, which is huge. Then he had 1.5 sacks, which is not great, but he's a linebacker. Maybe they didn't blitz him too often. And then he posted career high tackles against Boston College, where he had 8 tackles in a game. So that's pretty cool. Once again, 2 years of eligibility remaining. I think that's super, super cool there. All right, the last person I want to talk about as far as the transfer goes is Diani Hill. So he's a cornerback. We do need some help in the cornerback room. We do need help in the cornerback room. I think just about every team in America would say that they could use a little bit of help in the cornerback room. He's 6 foot, 172 pounds, from Gainesville, Florida. So it's always nice to go and steal somebody from the Florida Gators. I'm sure they were trying to get this kid too, but Hurricanes ended up coming through on this. So he's a 3-star prospect out of high school. He was rated 82. And then as a transfer, he's a 3-star transfer rated 86. So his trajectory is going up as well. That's always positive to hear. In 2023, he was second on the team in solo tackles, so he had 34, which is crazy as a cornerback, having the second most tackles. You don't really hear him. You don't hear that too often. Usually it's the linebackers and the safeties competing for the most tackles on the team. But for a corner to have that many, it's pretty crazy. So 34 solo tackles. He had 55 tackles on the season, broke up 10 passes, forced 1 fumble, and had 1 interception. And then, once again, just going with the trend, 2 years remaining. So what does this all mean? The first thing that this means to me is, if you remember last year, I was talking about the Florida State Seminoles, which I cannot stand them. I despise them. But I talked about how often they use the transfer portal And while a lot of people were super excited about it, I was on the opposite end of it. I really enjoy, or I prefer, for teams to have a slow build. So they have, a really good freshman class come in. Then the following year, they have another freshman class come in, and then another freshman class. And before you know it, you've got some really talented seniors, and then you've got really talented juniors behind them, and really, so you build a pipeline that way. I feel like you use the transfer portal to fill holes. You don't use the transfer portal to bring in a bunch of top tier talent because once they disappear, what are you left with? You know what I'm saying? So if you're not performing well in the I'm sorry, if you're not performing well in the high school not the high school transfer. If you're not performing well in the high school recruiting, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be bringing in a bunch of talent through the transfer portal because then once those transfers graduate or once they leave after the 1 year they're going to be on your team is pretty much in shambles if you don't hit the jackpot in the transfer portal the next year. That is what Florida State did. Like they bring in players like Keon Coleman, and he plays outstanding for a season. But then once he's gone, you look at the receiving core and you're like, well, what's left? Because they didn't really do much developing with young talent. They didn't bring a bunch of young talent as far as the receivers go. So you borrow people, you basically rent players for a season. Almost like what we're doing with our quarterback this year, right? So what does it mean for us? Um, I do think that they're using they're obviously the Hurricanes are obviously performing super well when it comes to just high school recruiting. That's always nice. And they've been building this pipeline, making every layer, freshman, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, making every level super stable. That's positive. And then they're using the transfer portal just to plug holes. For instance, our cornerbacks, they're not great right now. So they're looking in the transfer portal for corners. Defensive tackle is another position that we're kind of missing on. So they're looking in the transfer portal to bring in more of those players. I think it's really cool that they're doing that. But more than anything, does this change my outlook or does this change my perspective on what this season could potentially look like? Um, excuse me. So I think at the tail end, excuse me, just getting over this cold, but at the tail end of last year, when I saw Jakari Brown running around, man. So at the tail end of last year, when I saw Jakari Brown running around against Rutgers, I looked at the entire team and I said, this is a team that could potentially make a run at winning 10 games next year if Jakari Brown develops in the offseason because I thought he was going to be the starter this coming year. So I said if he continues to improve because he looked like he had really improved from the previous year, and then we're able to bring back quite a few players from that team, I said we could actually make a run for 10 wins. And then we ended up bringing Cam Ward on board. Once we did that, my mindset changed from we could make a run at 10 games to all of a sudden thinking we have to win 10 games. 10 games has to be the floor. And we could actually compete for winning the ACC this year. We should be in the ACC championship, or at least be sniffing the ACC championship. That was my thought once we got Cam Ward. Okay, so now that we've gotten all of these players and more in the transfer portal, it makes me feel like we have to win the ACC. If we don't win the ACC, we at least have to be in the ACC championship. Have to be. If we're not in the ACC championship, if we don't get 10 wins, I'm going to feel like we had a major, major loss this season. I'm going to feel like it's just a waste of a year if we don't have 10 wins plus find ourselves in the ACC championship. So with that being the case, because our talent, I think we're one of the most talented teams in the country now. Our quarterback is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Our running back is one of the best running backs in the country. We have one of the best wide receivers in the country. We just got a transfer in who's one of the best wide receivers in the country. Our defense, we have one of the best linebackers in the country. Like we have talent all over the place. So to not get to the ACC championship would be a huge downfall, I think. Huge letdown. So let's talk about making the playoffs. Do we think making the playoffs is a realistic opportunity? I think yes, it is. Especially, obviously, if we win the ACC, we'll go to the playoffs. But I think that there is an opportunity for us to make the playoffs this season. I don't think it's crazy if we did make the playoffs. I would not be shocked. I'll just say that. Wouldn't be shocked at all if the Hurricanes found themselves in the playoffs. Now let's talk about actually winning the whole thing. Do I think it's a possibility of us winning the whole thing? The way I'll answer that is by talking about what I believe championship teams will look like in the near future. And I think they're almost all going to resemble what Michigan just did to win the whole thing. I think they're going to have 5 people up front on their offensive line plus the tight end, so 6 up front, who's going to be running over whatever defensive front they're up against. And I think they're going to have I think they're going to have 6 defensive linemen who are just killing the opposing offensive line. I think it's mainly going to be about the trenches the next 5 or 6 champions before college football shifts and changes a little bit, because every sport shifts and changes every 6 or 7 years or so. But I believe the next 5, 6, or 7 champions are going to be those teams that just have crazy, big, strong, athletic offensive linemen, and then they're going to have nasty, disruptive defensive linemen. I think that's what's going to really be the key and what wins everything. I think skill players might have won championships in the late 90s, early 2000s, but I think these next few years is going to be all about trenches. And I don't think that we have the trenches right now to be able to win a championship. I think if you put this coming Hurricanes team up against a team like Alabama from last year or Michigan from last year, I think they would make us look pretty bad. That's just my thoughts on it. So I do not think that we could win the whole championship this coming year, but I do believe that we can win the ACC championship, and I would not be shocked if we make the playoffs. That's where my mindset is. ACC championship, got to get there. Wouldn't be surprised if we won the ACC. Wouldn't be surprised if we made the playoffs. I would be, as shocked if we won the whole thing, I would be more shocked than if I woke up with my head sewn to my pillow. I would be that shocked. So that's where I am. Let me know your thoughts on that. Do you think you would be shocked if we win the ACC championship next year? Would you be disappointed if we don't win the ACC championship next year? That's the question that I want y'all to answer. Would you be disappointed if we don't win it? Would you be shocked if we do win it? Let me know your thoughts on that. I know we're going to hear from some Florida State folks because they always in the comment section talking about our Hurricanes, but it is what it is. So that's all that I got for you today. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I truly appreciate that. Take care. God bless. Peace.